You've heard a lot about Quakers tonight so far in the storytelling we've been talking about. And next you're going to meet someone who is not a Quaker, but who has become who has a very unique story and who has become someone very engaged with FCNL and engaged because of the mission and because of the lobbying work. And not only has he become engaged, but he's brought some friends with him. Ken Alexander and his wife Debbie are here tonight, and Tracy Edmonds, a friend, is going to come up and talk a little bit about Ken's story. But before he does that, I'd just like to ask, if you are here partly because Ken Alexander encouraged you to be here, would you stand up and just let people know? Wow. So, we're recruiting lobbyists. And as part of I have an abiding concern about trying to get more Quakers involved in lobbying. That was part of the intent of the Quaker Public Policy Institute. But we also know that we need a lot of non-Quakers lobbying with FCNL on these issues. And we know that there are thousands, probably tens of thousands of people across this country who share our values and share our concerns. So I'd like to ask Tracy to come up and talk a little bit about how Ken got involved with FCNL.
Thank you, Diane. Well, I'm very honored to be able to speak to this fantastic group. I've really enjoyed the time that I've had here. So we've been hearing about people with inspiring stories, and so I was asked to come in and talk about the people that inspired me to be here. This is my second year here. First, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm married to Beth Edmonds, and we have 2 teenage daughters. I'm just a regular guy. I work in the high-tech arena at a company called Cisco Systems as an engineering manager. For most of my life, I would not have characterized myself as a humanitarian or someone working in the area of social justice, but that's actually been changing quite a bit for Beth and I lately. And just to be clear, we are not Quakers, and we don't come from a Quaker background at all. A few years ago, Beth and I became friends with Ken and Deborah Alexander, who live in the Pacific Northwest. We met them through a network of mutual friends that are spread across the country. We were drawn to this group because of a shared deep feeling of concern and for what is going on in our country and the world. We have a strong, growing sense of responsibility and a desire to actually step up and do something to help address the imbalances that exist in the world, such as the violent conflicts that stem from religious hatred and the tremendous gap that exists between rich and poor nations. Now, Ken Alexander is in a very unique position. He retired from a 30-year career in the Navy as a captain. His career included 18 years as a Navy reservist. One of the projects that he was responsible for was the creation of the Emergency Management Program for the Navy. This was a 2+ year project that was primarily authored by Ken and one other individual who was a military contract employee. Part of this project for Ken involved working with NAVSEA to obtain funding for the program, and it was basically run very much like a weapons program with regards to funding, oversight, and management. This experience underscored for Ken about how little transparency and accountability actually exists for these types of programs. He saw how much of the funding for this program was being wasted or siphoned off for people and activities that were not really contributing to the effort of creating the actual emergency management instructions that the program was tasked with doing. In the end, the Navy ended up with a very extensive emergency management plan that was primarily authored by 2 people. It cost about $1.5 million, and Ken estimates that it likely could have been done for about 1/3 of that cost. Concurrent with Ken's work as a Navy reservist, he has had a civilian career as a principal in an engineering firm that specializes in municipal water and wastewater treatment infrastructure. Most of this firm's clients are towns with populations of fewer than 4,000 people. The towns that Ken's firm works with have aging and failing water systems, infrastructure that are typically in dire need of being replaced. These are sizable projects, and most of the towns cannot afford the cost involved. One of the things that Ken's engineering firm does, in addition to designing the systems, is to help to procure the federal funding needed to execute the projects. This funding comes in the form of grants and loans from federally funded programs such as EPA, HUD, and USDA Rural Development. So Ken has firsthand experience in what this process is like and the great difficulties and red tape involved in not only procuring the funding, but also dealing with the regulations, accountability, and oversight involved in a federally funded municipal infrastructure project. What struck Ken so much and what he becomes very passionate about is his observation that there has been a progressive decrease in federal funding for programs that can assist smaller communities with their infrastructure needs, while at the same time he has observed DoD budgets increasing substantially. It has also been Ken's observation that there is a substantial dichotomy between the high degree of accountability and transparency that is required for federally funded municipal infrastructure programs versus DoD programs. Ken has experienced firsthand how the general lack of accountability with DoD programs has resulted in the waste and misappropriation of funds. Shortly before he retired from the Navy, Ken discovered the Friends Committee on National Legislation, and he began talking to his friends about it. He could see that this was an organization that was very much aligned with addressing the types of concerns that he and we had. He could see that FCNL and the Quakers were very well grounded in their drive and ability to make a difference with respect to the types of decisions that our federal government is making. 2 years ago, Ken and Deborah decided that they were going to donate a specific and notable amount of money to FCNL on Ken's birthday, which is November 11th. Ken and Deborah reached out to their group of friends and challenged us to do the exact same thing, that we might make a unified statement of appreciation and pledge of our support for this great organization. A number of us accepted this challenge, and on November 11th of 2010, checks that were written for the exact same amount of money started arriving at FCNL, along with letters addressed to Joe Volk, thanking him and FCNL for the work they were doing in working with our government to educate them to change the course that our country is taking in matters of war and military spending and focus. This event opened the door for us and for our friends to begin forging relationships with the staff of FCNL and to become active in our support. Last November, Ken and I attended our first FCNL annual meeting, and I learned how to lobby. Ken has continued to be an example and an inspiration to me through his relentless work to lobby with his state senators through meetings and letter writing. This year, my wife and I used Ken's story as a basis to hold an FCNL fundraiser in our home, where we hosted friends and coworkers for dinner and the exchange of information. This is the first time that Beth and I had ever attempted anything like this, and we were fortunate to have the help and support of FCNL's Stephen Donahoe. Our event was a great success, and I would like to publicly thank Stephen for his support. Because of Ken and Deborah's ongoing example, there are actually several people besides me that have joined them here this week to participate in lobbying in the annual meeting, and you just saw them a few minutes ago. Speaking as someone that is discovering and getting more involved in this work, I really want to acknowledge FCNL and its staff and the Quakers for the amazing things that you are doing here. When I describe FCNL to my friends and coworkers, I tell them about how practical this group is and how they are very grounded and how they are all about the business of working with our government, the way that it was designed to be worked with. I tell them about the level of expertise that is here in the various focus areas and how these subject matter experts lobby our lawmakers. I explain that it is all about teaching our lawmakers to see and understand the reality of the issues that they are voting on. I also tell them about how this organization recognizes that nothing is going to be solved overnight, and they are persistent and they're unwilling to give up in the face of adversity. I could easily go on and on about this, but my time is about up. I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for Ken and Deborah for getting me involved. And I thank you for the opportunity to be able to tell the story.
Stand up, Ken. Can you stand up just so people see you?